They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. That deal's going to be made with China.
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Trump has paused his tariffs for 90 days. It should be called a rollback or a U-turn after markets crashed and US bonds lost value, but the Americans are nothing if not spin masters, so they're calling it a pause and a win. Go figure. The markets are trying to calm down, recession fears have not gone away, and trust issues have worsened. We'll look at what prompted the pause, why China is still under attack now with 125% tariffs and how it is fighting back. What should be India's strategy? Why Germany is mulling moving gold back from the US and what lies ahead in the Trump trade war. Also in focus, 2611 accused Tehevur Rana is back in India. It exposes US terror hypocrisy. They took 16 years to extradite a terrorist and cut a deal with his partner. Why US visas are being cancelled over anti-Trump posts. How the Panama Canal has become a battleground. Would you clone your pet? Thousands of people are doing it. And can artificial intelligence predict murder? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Turkey and Israel hold talks to ease tensions over Syria. Ankara is a key supporter of the new Syrian regime which toppled Bashar al-Assad last December. But Israel wants to keep the Syrian forces away from its border and has launched airstrikes and ground incursions to deter them. Turkey has suspended all trade with Israel over the Gaza war. The US and Russia swapped prisoners as they push to rebuild ties. Washington exchanged a sanctions-busting suspect for a ballet dancer held by Moscow. The exchange took place at an airport in Abu Dhabi. This is the second prisoner swap under US President Donald Trump. The death toll from the Dominican Republic nightclub disaster rises to more than 200. The tragedy took place on Tuesday after a roof collapsed at a crowded nightclub. More than 500 people have been injured. This is the Caribbean nation's worst disaster in decades. More trouble for ousted Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. A fresh arrest warrant has been issued against her and her daughter in a corruption case. Hasina also faces 2 arrest warrants over alleged humanitarian crimes and forced disappearances. Last August, she fled Bangladesh and has been living in India since then. And look who's back as captain in the Indian Premier League. MS Dhoni will lead the Chennai Super Kings for the remainder of the tournament. He will replace Rituraj Gaikwad, who is out of the IPL due to an elbow injury. 43-year-old Dhoni was captain of the CSK till 2024.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day that we began to make America wealthy again. I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate.
Donald Trump has rolled back the tariffs 8 days after he announced them and 12 hours after they came into effect. He has declared a pause. In fact, his trade war began unraveling from the word go. Pressure started mounting on the White House from top CEOs to Wall Street traders. Everyone wanted Trump to slow down, and after much grandstanding, he complied.
They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate.
Trump says this 90-day pause is for 75 countries, those who have been calling up and pleading with him for a trade deal. The actual words he used were worse, so we'll go with pleading. Trump has been boasting about this, suggesting that the whole world is bending over backwards to woo him. He kept saying he won't budge, but he did within 12 hours.
TSMC, I gave him no.
So America's trade partners now have 90 days. If they can manage a deal in this period, they won't face tariffs. But China is not part of this list. It is clearly enemy number one for the United States, so Donald Trump is piling on the pressure. He has raised tariffs on Chinese goods again from 104% to 125%. We'll discuss this in detail in just a bit, but for the moment, let's focus on Trump's U-turn. Here is how the last 24 hours played out. As always, it began on social media. That's how things begin with Donald Trump. On social media, he posted on his platform Truth Social, and this is what he said. This is a great time to buy. That's all. That was the post. Traders took note. They gave a mixed reaction during the early morning trade. The markets fluctuated, swinging between red and green. There was a lot of speculation on what this post really meant. Many thought Trump was teasing another announcement, maybe a shift in policy or at least a pause. While all of this played out in the markets and on social media, behind the scenes, Trump was working on an announcement. He huddled with his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. Together, they drafted the 90-day pause plan. And within hours, it was made official. Again, Trump broke the news on social media. Minutes later, Bessent gave a statement to the press.
We saw the successful negotiating strategy that President Trump implemented a week ago today, and what we have ended up with here, as I told everyone a week ago, they are in this very spot, do not retaliate and you will be rewarded. So every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you.
He makes it sound like that was the plan all along. Trump's out of the deal and what have you. That's how Trump likes to frame each negotiation. Step one, take aggressive action, take an extreme position. The idea is to shock and awe. Do something unexpected that stuns the other side. That is step one. Step two, claim instant success. Say that the other side is caving. And step three, take a pause, announce a concession, and open the door for negotiation.
Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what President Trump is doing here. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China, because they need our markets, they need our consumers, and they need this president in the Oval Office to talk to them.
The White House is making it sound like a win, but it's a premature declaration. Trump still needs the trade deals to be locked. That's what the next 90 days are for. Without the trade deals, the tariffs could come back, so a deal is the final step, at least in Trump's calculus. And he's not giving up on that goal. He has not scrapped the tariffs. Even the pause/rollback is not complete. He has not withdrawn the 10% baseline tariff. Remember, this is something that came into effect on the 5th of April. Trump had imposed a flat 10% tax on every U.S. trade partner. And this 10% tax still applies. Same with the tax on steel, aluminium and automobiles. Their imports, steel, aluminium and automobile imports, were slapped with a 25% tariff, and that remains unchanged. The big tariffs, country-wide tariffs, were announced on April 2nd. Trump called it Liberation Day. Before that, he had taxed Canada and Mexico separately. Then he rolled back some of it. He's basically been taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's quite chaotic. Nonetheless, the markets welcomed this latest pause. Indian markets were shut today because of a national holiday, so we'll see the reaction tomorrow. U.S. stocks surged after Trump's announcement. Investors added $4.8 trillion in one day in value. This is the largest gain on record, $4.8 trillion, and this was yesterday. How are the markets doing today? The unease has returned. U.S. stocks appeared volatile early in the day. The dollar has also slipped. Investors remain uncertain about the long term, and that says a lot. After pausing the tariffs, Trump and his team are taking a victory lap, but investors are in no mood to celebrate yet. They're not confident about what may be coming next.
I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know, they were getting a little bit yippy. Bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it.
So the tariffs kicked in yesterday morning, and by nightfall, Trump had hit pause. A 90-day pause for every country except China. No details, no real explanation, just a pause. So what changed? For a president whose brand is rooted in toughness, this is a rare concession. Trump's been hyping up this tariff plan for weeks, promising to go full steam ahead. There was no backing down, not even when the markets tanked. So what prompted the sudden U-turn?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done.
You heard him. Trump says people were getting yippy. That's the word he used, yippy. But chances are this was not the only reason. So let's look at the factors that led to this U-turn. Number one, US debt bonds. The trade war hit them hard. It triggered a panic sell-off of US bonds. And what are bonds? You see, governments need money to run a country, but they don't always have enough of that money. So they borrow money by selling something that is called bonds. And who buys these bonds? Individuals, companies, even foreign governments. They can all buy US government bonds, or any government bonds for that matter. In return, the government pays them interest. That's the long and short of a government bond. Now, US government bonds are usually seen as a good investment. People love buying US bonds because they're seen as a safe haven. Investors flock to them during tough times. So the bond market is like a canary in a coal mine, but this time something spooked the canary. Trump's tariffs kicked off a trade war. It made investors nervous, so many of them started selling their US bonds. When you sell, bond prices drop. And what happens when bond prices drop? Interest rates go up. Basically, it costs the government more to borrow money. There aren't enough people buying their bonds. And that signals just one thing. Investors were losing confidence in the US economy. So Donald Trump was not really worried about the markets collapsing, but the bond sell-off, that was a different story altogether. If it kept going, his entire agenda could have become financially untenable. So behind the scenes, Trump officials were panicking. His own Treasury Secretary, by the way, called the situation, and I'm quoting, uncomfortable. Looks like it got a little too uncomfortable.
Bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. The bond market right now is beautiful. But yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. I think everything had. Well, the big move wasn't what I did today. The big move was what I did on Liberation Day.
So that was reason number one, the bond market sell-off that threatened the financial stability of the US government. Reason number two, Trump was losing political capital. While markets were sending signals, Trump's phone lines were melting. CEOs were frantically dialing the White House. Republicans were seeking clarity. Constituents were asking for answers, and all of them had the same warning. Their patience had limits. With midterm elections next year and public sentiment souring, the cost of staying the course was rising by the hour.
You have to have flexibility. I could say, here's a wall, and I'm going to go through that wall. I'm going to go through it no matter what. And keep going, and you can't go through the wall. Sometimes you have to be able to go under the wall, around the wall, or over the wall. These guys know that better than anybody, right?
Which brings us to reason number 3, negotiations. Ironically, it was the success of the tariff threat that gave Trump an off-ramp. The tariffs jolted countries into picking up the phone. They all wanted to talk to Trump. In true art of the deal fashion. That's the whole point. Make a big move, rattle the room, then wait for them to come to you. In Trumpian logic, that looks like a victory. So for him, this is not a pause. This is a tactical recalibration. A pause that could give way to 100 potential trade deals.
A deal's going to be made with China. A deal's going to be made with every one of them. And they'll be fair deals. I just want fair. They will be fair deals for everybody. But they weren't fair to the United States. They were sucking us dry.
This tells you all you need to know about Donald Trump. He is a man of gut decisions, calibrated more by cable news than cabinet meetings. Policy is often reactive, not proactive. Negotiation is a performance, not a process. 1 week, the world braces for a trade war. The next, it's a pause and a negotiation bonanza. So what happens next? Will the tariffs come back after 90 days? Maybe, maybe not. No one knows for sure. But what happened here says something bigger. Trade wars are not just about tariffs. They're also about timing, perception, and politics, and sometimes even the boldest of plans have to wait. Let's talk about China now. Donald Trump is doubling down on Beijing. In 2 days, he has raised tariffs on China twice. The tax on Chinese imports is now at 125%. That's higher than anyone else. Anything coming from China into the US will be taxed 125%. The US president has singled out China. There is no tariff pause for the Chinese. At the same time, he believes that China wants to make a deal with him.
China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. You know, it's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people. And President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well. And they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal.
So Trump has not given up hope. He believes China does want to make a deal. But Xi Jinping doesn't know how to ask. That may or may not be the case. What we can say is this. Xi Jinping has a response, and he is delivering it quite clearly and effectively. China is retaliating every step of the way. In round 1, Trump slapped a 54% tariff on China. China hit back with 84% retaliatory tariffs on US imports. Enraged, Donald Trump raised the stakes. He increased the tariffs on China to 125%. But Beijing remains undeterred. It is fighting back in multiple ways, some symbolic, others substantial. For instance, China has moved the WTO against the US. That's the World Trade Organization. Its mandate is to enforce international trade rules, but in recent years, its limitations have become quite obvious. So China's appeal may be just to make a point. The WTO may not be able to help them very much. The second move from Beijing is this. It is punishing American businesses. It has restricted 18 US companies. They will have a tough time doing business in China now, and this happened yesterday. 18 companies. Today, Beijing went after Hollywood. Reports say it will curb movie imports from the US. And now with Donald Trump raising the stakes further, China plans to target American interests in more ways. Here's what they said today.
The United States is still imposing tariffs on China, and China is firmly opposed to such bullying. China will absolutely not accept pressure, threats, and blackmail. That is not the right way to deal with China. If the U.S. side really wants to talk, it should show an attitude of equality, respect, and reciprocity. If the United States ignores the interests of the two countries and the international community and insists on fighting a tariff war and a trade war, China will certainly accompany it to the end.
We will fight till the end. They're calling Trump's actions blackmail. What about Trump's offers to make a deal? Does Beijing want to work something out? Here's what China's Commerce Ministry Here's how they responded to the question.
China's position is clear and consistent. The door to talks is open, but dialogue must be conducted on an equal basis with mutual respect. China will stand by its position until the end. Pressuring, threatening, and blackmailing are not the correct ways to deal with China. We hope that the U.S. will work with China. Based on the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and a win-win cooperation, we will properly resolve differences through dialogue and consultation. Thank you.
China says it is open to dialogue, but it doesn't trust the US. It doesn't believe that Trump will negotiate in good faith. It's a bit rich coming from China, but I guess that's how karma works. Unfortunately, this deadlock hurts the rest of the world too. Because the US and China are the world's two biggest economies, their clash will have a lot of collateral damage. The US is the biggest importer of goods in the world. China is the biggest exporter. Unlike other countries, Trump has not given China an out. Neither has Beijing shown any sign of stepping back. It is preparing for the long haul, complete with a trade war toolkit. China is basically working on two fronts. One, stabilizing its economy. Two, raising pressure on the US. At home, Beijing is working to calm the stock markets. And for this, it has mobilized state-owned enterprises, SOEs. They're very big in China. When Chinese stocks fell after Trump's announcement, these state-owned enterprises bought shares to keep prices stable. China's Reserve Bank is also doing its bit. It has allowed their currency, the yuan, to weaken. And how does that help? It makes Chinese exports cheaper. It negates the impact of the tariffs to a certain extent. Beijing is also trying to control the narrative. Chinese censors have been selectively, of course, censoring posts online about Trump's tariffs and the larger trade war. Posts that target and criticize the US are being allowed. The ones that discuss Trump's tariffs in details are being removed. The idea is to shape public sentiment in favor of China and paint the US in poor light. So that's the domestic response. And in the days ahead, China could take more targeted steps. It could hit US agricultural imports. That's a key part of Trump's support base. The US financial services sector could also be in the crosshairs. This includes American investment banks and asset management companies. Again, these are part of Trump's support base. So the aim is to strike at Trump's political backers, to build pressure on the US president. These do not look like the moves of a country that is dying to get a deal with Trump. This is a fight back. The US-China trade war is escalating.
The last few days I've been thinking about it. We don't want to hurt countries that don't need to be hurt, and they all want to negotiate.
So Trump is now China's headache. He has increased tariffs again to 145% now. But that's no reason for India to be complacent. In fact, now is the time to be proactive. India has 90 days to make its next move. The first priority will be to conclude a trade deal. If not a full one, at least a mini trade deal. One that will avert the tariffs, because the next round could be more painful. Look at Trump's initial tariffs. He excluded some crucial industries like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. They were not tariffed. But his next round could include them.
So we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceuticals. And when they hear that, they will leave China, they will leave other places because they have to sell. Most of their product is sold here.
And that's bad news for India. We export a lot of pharma products to the US. The trade is worth almost $10 billion. Any tariff on that could hurt producers. And we saw the impact on Wednesday. India's pharma stocks took a plunge. The Nifty's pharma basket was down 2%. That's another reason for India to speed up the trade talks. But that's only one part of the plan. Indian officials clearly see this as an opportunity. Yesterday, we spoke to India's Commerce Minister. He called the trade war a good omen.
The US has suffered massive trade deficits because of the non-market economy that is China, because of their predatory pricing or unfair trade practices. And I think the United States is trying to reset the rules of the game. And in some sense, it's a good omen for India.
So how can India turn this challenge into a success? That requires mainly two things. Number one, diversifying our exports beyond the United States. Right now, the US is our biggest market. It makes up more than 18% of India's total exports. But now it's an unreliable market, which is why India needs to diversify. How do we do that? By striking more trade deals with other partners. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is on the job. She's on a visit to Britain right now. Her goal is to seal a free trade deal with London. And reports say 90% of the deal is done. Just a couple of issues are left to be addressed, like whiskey, cars and pharmaceuticals. India's biggest concern was mobility. New Delhi wanted more British visas for Indians, and reports say that issue has largely been addressed. If so, we could see a deal soon. A second agreement is being discussed with Europe. The European Union president had visited New Delhi this year. She agreed to conclude a trade deal before the end of 2025, and both sides are taking a new approach. They want to finish the deal in phases. Normally, you sign one comprehensive agreement, but India and the EU want to break it up. Issues of least difference can be taken up first. The more contentious ones can be taken up later. And what would that achieve? Well, some of the barriers can be lifted sooner. You don't have to wait around for a full deal to get things going. I guess this makes the government strategy pretty clear. Strike as many deals as possible. In fact, the finance minister spelled it out herself. She said, multilateral trade is on the back burner. Bilateral is the way to go.
India is also looking at many bilateral arrangements. In the recent past, we've signed agreements with Australia, with UAE, with Oman, and we are looking forward to concluding the bilateral trade agreement with UK, negotiating also with the EU, and this is going to catch up, and I think that's the way the world is going. Multilateral is at the moment in the back burner.
So that's part one of India's plan, strike deals to reduce trade barriers. The second part is arguably more important. India must ramp up its manufacturing footprint. Just look at these numbers. India makes up 2.9% of the global manufacturing output. China makes up more than 31%, 2.9 versus 31%. Almost a third of all goods in the world are made in China. Now, Trump is intent on breaking that dominance. Even Europe is looking for alternatives, and that is where India comes in. A similar opportunity came up a few years back during Trump's first term as president. First, he launched a trade war with China. Then came the Wuhan virus pandemic, and both these events forced companies to shift out of China. But where did they go? We don't have the full numbers with us, but look at the period from April 2018 to August 2019. This is before the pandemic. 2018 to 2019, this was the peak of the US-China trade war. Around 56 US firms relocated from China. 26 of them went to Vietnam. 11 went to Taiwan, 8 went to Thailand. Do you know how many came to India? Just 3. Many experts ruled that lost opportunity, that chance to capitalize on the exodus from China. But thankfully, a second opportunity has presented itself now. It happens very rarely in geopolitics. So it is important for India to make it count this time. Back then, companies had certain concerns. They said India's tariffs were too high. They complained about red tape and regulatory issues. Almost 5 years have passed now. India has made strides to address those concerns. So let's see if we have better luck this time. Vantage continues after a short break.
Walk us through your thinking about why you decided to put a 90-day pause.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. A deal's going to be made with China. A deal's going to be made with every one of them. And there'll be fair deals. I just want fair. There will be fair deals for everybody. But they weren't fair to the United States. They were sucking us dry, and you can't do that. Bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. The bond market right now is beautiful. But yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. I think everything had, well, the big move wasn't what I did today. The big move was what I did on Liberation Day.
It's been a financial thriller with no clear ending. The markets plunge into chaos, then they soar on a single announcement. 1 minute China faces 125% tariffs, the next it has 145%. One day the US is heading towards a recession, the next day predictions suggest only a slump. But beneath all the ups and downs, there's a bigger question that is haunting the global economy. Can the US still be trusted as the world's safe haven? The 90-day pause in tariffs may have calmed the markets, but it seems to have rattled America's most powerful currency of all, trust. Our next report tells you why.
The markets have been on a wild roller coaster for weeks. 1 minute they're plunging, the next they're skyrocketing. And just when everyone thinks the ride is going to end in a crash, a surprise twist happens. Trump hit the brakes on his tariff plan. The news is like a sudden breath of fresh air. Global markets surge again, registering one of their biggest gains since the Second World War. But here's the thing. It wasn't all smooth sailing. Yes, the pause sounded like good news at first, but it doesn't mean the storm is over. You see, Trump's move brought a brief calm. But the reality was that tariffs were still very much a part of the picture. China wasn't even included in this 90-day break, and Washington-Beijing tensions are only getting worse. In fact, the tariffs on Chinese goods has shot up to 125%. So the trade war is not exactly ending anytime soon.
Everything is still very volatile because with Donald Trump, you don't know what to expect, because this is really big uncertainty in the big market. The threat of recession has not faded, and one of the most important indicators is that U.S. interest rates are spiking because people fear that China will unload $1 trillion worth of U.S. Treasury bills.
1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth of US Treasury bills. 1 trillion US dollars worth
And here's where the plot thickens. The pause in tariffs gave Wall Street a reason to cheer, but the underlying uncertainties remained. When the tariffs were announced, most economists predicted a recession, but they've backtracked from it now. Goldman Sachs now sees no recession in the near future, but has kept odds of a serious downturn at just under 50%. So they believe the trade tornado has been averted. But as a lot of experts have warned, the US economy is still in a precarious place. Here's the real problem. All this uncertainty, these constant policy flip-flops, and the erratic nature of the Trump administration's approach to trade, it's starting to erode one of the US's most valuable assets, trust. For years, the US has been seen as a safe haven for global investors. When times were tough, people turned to US government bonds and the dollar. They knew the US had the stability and power to weather any storm. But can they?
And those are the visuals on your screens. Ladies and gentlemen, Tahawwur Rana and the entire NIA team arriving at the special court at the Patiala House Court, the special NIA court at the Patiala House Court. The entire cavalcade has now reached the court complex. Tahawwur Rana, in custody of the NIA, will now be produced before the special judge. The entire cavalcade has now reached the Patiala House Court. My colleague Ananya is reporting from outside the Patiala House Court as Tahawwur Rana and the NIA team that took the custody of Tahawwur Rana from the US officials has now reached the Patiala House Court for the hearing. Ananya, over to you. Give us the details. What's the latest?
Well, you can see right behind me is in fact the gate from which the